And he's like, I'm going to invite a couple friends. So we fly to LA and we host this dinner. And it's very intimate, like 20, 25 people. And he invited the head of Virgin Galactic.
You're kidding me.
NASA people who worked on the moon mission, the lunar program, Space for Humanity, the daughter of the Saudi king. And of course, Cameron, in the middle of the dinner, takes the glass and does the thing. And he's like, welcome, everyone. So today we have something important to announce. And what happened after, like all the ripples from that dinner are still unfolding.
Hello, everyone. This is the Space Cafe podcast, and I'm Markus. So only recently I meet this remarkable person at a speed dating meeting at an industry event in Marrakech, Morocco. Very unexpected encounter where there were a bunch of people at the table, and this young woman called Jasmine El Baggari shares her story, and I was captivated. She tells us how she almost becomes an astronaut and now brings astronauts and refugees to the same tables on a global scale, a mission to cool down or help cool down our overheating global societies and to inspire us to see the world through a different lens. And she's looking back at a still very young age at an impressive journey and impressive path. Research at Harvard University, works with the World Bank, United States State Department, the World Economic Forum, Obama's Global Entrepreneurship Summit. She's invited to the White House. She's, of course, among the Forbes 100 most influential and most inspiring young leaders, and so on and so forth. And so it's definitely a story that transcends boundaries, and I felt like this story needs to be told right here on the Space Cafe podcast. Still, you could say, is this my cup of tea? This is maybe not what you expect from the Space Cafe podcast, but I think this is exactly what you expect. What if? Could be. So give this a try, because here at the Space Cafe podcast, we love pushing the boundaries, pushing the envelopes. We explore what it means to be human, to understand our ambitions, our planetary ambitions down here on Earth and in space. Yasmine El Baggari, Moroccan-born, a dreamer, a connector, and someone changing lives on Earth and maybe one day beyond it. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Yasmine El Baggari to the Space Cafe podcast. Let's go. Tell me, how close did you get toward becoming an astronaut?
Oh my God. Like very close. It was a dream for a moment. Although I do feel that it's going to happen in my lifetime, for all of us, in fact. I applied for Space for Humanity, which is this amazing initiative that has this mission to enable space for everyone and to go to outer space and experience the overview effect and then come back to Earth as an Earth ambassador. As a civilian, not a NASA astronaut or ECA, like European Space Agency, like anyone could go to space. So I was in the final 5 from 7,000 applicants.
7,000.
From all over the world. So close. It was a series of applications. Like the whole premise of Space for Humanity is to really think of yourself as an Earth ambassador. So you're not just going to space for the fun of it, but you're really going to elevate your perspective and then come back and have impact on the planet. And so you go to a series of applications. My program that I applied with was Voyaj, which is my whole mission the last decade around bringing humanity together. And so the whole idea was go into space, and the message was, come on, humans, talk to each other across differences, across cultures, and across borders. So it wasn't time yet, but I will be applying again and again. So...
What would be the first thing you would do in space?
Probably a backflip. I would probably, I would want to look down at the Earth. And, my friend Cyan Proctor, the first Black woman to pilot a spacecraft to outer space with SpaceX. And this was back in 2021 when Inspiration 4, which was the first all-civilian mission to go to space, took 4 civilians, everyday people, to around the Earth for 3 days. And they got to witness 45 sunrises and sunsets because they're going so fast. It takes about 90 minutes to go around the Earth. So imagine you're there for 3 days. It was extra.
It gets even boring then.
It gets boring. Yes, I imagine 3 days. A lot of the astronauts I've talked to, they talk about how they just want to stay there for longer. Like there's something like a longing, like you're reflecting, looking back at the Earth, reflecting about all the people in it and all the communities that you know. And I think there's something really profound that happens to them from what I'm hearing. Oh, the overview effect. Frank White would be a perfect book that I recommend to everyone to read because he interviews astronauts from all over the world to explore the overview effect. And I really want Frank White to go to space. He's a legend in the space industry and hasn't gotten to go yet.
Isn't that crazy? He writes a book about the overview effect and hasn't seen it.
It's wild. He told me the other day, actually a couple months ago when I saw him at the Eclipse Festival in Texas, in the US, how he coined the term the overview effect back in the 70s. But nobody cared. Nobody knew about it. And there was no interest. But in the last decade or so, now everybody talks about the overview effect. It's become more popular. So he's just so happy that a book that he wrote so long ago is finally now like understood by everyday people.
That's so fantastic. I could like really think of a very, very nice gesture if the world put together the money necessary for him to go up into space. That would be a pretty cool thing to do.
Yes, if this interview, hey humans, if you're watching this and you want to donate to Frank White to go to space, reach out to us because that would be
Frankie goes to space.
Yeah, Frank, let's send Frank to space. That would be a dream, truly, because he's such an amazing person. He would be great actually to interview as well. Such a good human, like good-hearted human. He lives in Cambridge in Boston. And he holds these overview roundtables every week, and he brings the space community together to talk about everything space, and just spectacular human being.
Interesting. What drives you to be interested in space?
Wow, that's a really good question. It's funny because I never really thought of space for the longest time. This is very recent. It was until 2019. So I had this dream to go to all 50 states in my 20s, which I did. I got to 49 and then I got scared because I was so driven by this dream and I didn't know who I was going to be if I finished this dream. So I was kind of scared.
The end of the line.
Yeah, like who am I on the other side of this wild dream that drove me for 10 years? And it took a breakup, like a relationship breakup to get me out and finish it. So I took a one-way ticket to Alaska. And when I got to Alaska, I had this revelation that one, I was in love with the planet. Not just I love the world. There's a difference between I like the world and I love the world and I'm in love with this planet. Like the beauty, and I had this spiritual awakening, whatever people call it these days. But I felt myself being out there in space, having that. I didn't even know the word overview effects. I didn't know the term, but I imagined myself being out there looking down at the Earth. And I actually imagined myself on the moon, being at that point, still today, there has never been a woman on the moon, never been a Moroccan in space as well. So I felt this drive, this new dream of like breaking the barriers. Like, I'd like to go to the moon. Why not? How can I get to the moon? And then a week later, after having this revelation, every new person I start meeting was in the space industry. Like, it was wild. So
It's
wild.
like they say when you're pregnant, you only see pregnant women, and so
Yeah.
when you're ready to go to space, you only meet space people.
It really is true. Even in Morocco on Monday, I met you. You're in space. It's like everybody I met, for the most part, on Monday here in Marrakesh, in my home country, in the film conference, was in space. They worked on a space program or interviewed astronauts, or they knew Science Proctor. Like, wild. I'm like, okay, all right, universe. I'm not doing anything. It's just happening. And Space for Humanity happened. Actually, it's a funny story. It's a good story because my friend Cameron Sinclair, who also is another epic human, I told him about this dream that I wanted to go to the moon. And he said, great, let's have a dinner that we co-host together. And the theme is going to be inner and outer space. I'm like, great, that sounds amazing. And he's like, I'm going to invite a couple friends. So we fly to LA and we host this dinner. And it's very intimate, like 20, 25 people. And he invited the head of Virgin Galactic,
You're kidding me.
NASA people who worked on the moon mission, the lunar program, Space for Humanity. The daughter of the Saudi king, NASA, was there. Her name was NASA, by the way, who we became good friends. Mona Hamdi, who's like, works on ethics and technology and knew all the space people at Harvard. Wild. I'm just like, very intimate group. And Loretta Whitesides, who I'd love to talk about. She's trains.
We had her in the show.
Loretta? Are you
Yes,
serious?
Yes.
What?
Yes.
Oh my God. Okay.
She's fantastic.
Loretta changed my life. So Loretta Whitesides, I can't believe it. That's amazing. So yeah, Loretta Whitesides was at this dinner. Very intimate. Again, I knew nobody in space. This was my first introduction. And of course, Cameron, in the middle of the dinner, takes the glass and does the thing. And he's like, welcome, everyone. So today we have something important to announce. We have this young Moroccan woman who has a dream that she would like to share with all of you. And Markus, it was one of those moments where I'm like, this is insane. Like, I can't just reveal my dream to all these incredible humans. And he looked at me, he's like, Yasmine, come on, you got this. This is your moment.
No preparation.
No preparation. He didn't even tell me or prompt me he was going to do this. And Anousheh Ansari, first Iranian woman
Had her in the show.
to go to space. Love her. She's another inspiration of mine. And she was there at the dinner. And I'm just mesmerized. And so, of course, I just share my story, like my 50-state dream and this revelation I had. And Loretta came up to me and she's like, okay, you're going to do my training, like Virgin Galactic training she's been doing. And I went to her program.
That's the Jedi program.
Yes. Have you done it?
No, she told me about it. I'd love to do it.
You should definitely do it. So I now help with the mastermind every other month with Alex Carl, who's he actually is from Germany. Amazing person also, but his job, I think it's the coolest job. His job is to check in with astronauts every day in the International Space Station to make sure they're okay. Yeah. I mean, the European astronauts, obviously. And I think that's really cool. But he's another amazing person. So I share my dream, and I felt the significance of that moment. I knew that moment of me having a bit of courage to share in front of this group of people.
A group of strangers. Absolute strangers. That's
complete strangers. And what happened after, like all the ripples from that dinner are still unfolding. And so even Anousheh Ansari is like, here's my number. You will go to space one day. And if you need anything, reach out. It's amazing. I'm just like, as a mentor, as a friend, like woman to woman. And that changed my life. And so that's how I found out about Space for Humanity and applied and went from 7,000 to the final 5.
This is a fantastic story. Why do you think those stars aligned? Literally, why? Why is that? What is happening? Who's responsible for that?
I mean, probably
Who pulls the strings?
there's like a force beyond this world that is indescribable. Some people call it God, some people call it Allah, some people call it the universe. And I feel whatever it is, I just I'm a believer in, like, if you have the right intentions, like, the world aligns and creates the pathway for you to walk. And as you begin to walk, as my friend Rumi would say, who's one of the greatest poets of our time, that as you begin to walk the path appears. You need to have that alignment in the heart and intentions and mind. So I felt that way. I feel this way even today. Like, as long as I'm aligned with myself, everything is unfolding as it's meant to be.
Is there a method to get yourself on that path, to find that truth in yourself? Because I feel like it's all about finding something that truly drives you, that truly motivates you, or you're sort of losing yourself in something. Is this sheer luck to find something, or can this be initiated?
I believe everyone has it in them. And some people are more ready than others. And my deepest hope and longing is for everyone to experience it and move towards it. And I believe it's sometimes just the right encounter, someone believing in you, a story that resonates. But I do believe that it's not luck. I believe it's readiness coupled with motivation and purpose and the desire for something to be different. I'll give you an example, which actually will answer your question about how I got to space. So there's the back story, which I love because it's here in Morocco that it started, and it's the moon landing back in 1969. So my uncle, Ahmed, who's a very important character in my life journey, he's the one who believed in me, the first person who believed in me. I guess my parents would be first, but he saw something in me. He's like, you belong in the world, at 13, and I, in a world where I felt like I couldn't really leave Morocco. And so he was born in a farm in a small village in Morocco. He had 11 brothers and sisters. There were 12. And his destiny was to become a farmer. That's what you did back then in the 60s. But he was always different. He was a dreamer. He was someone who asked questions, was curious, didn't want to follow the traditional path. But it didn't really, in the setting that he was in, it was really challenging. And one day he describes encountering, I believe it was a British man, that had an interaction in the village, and it inspired him. It gave him a sense of hope, because this person saw him, even though they didn't speak the language. And as a departing gift, this man gave my uncle a transistor radio, which was now his new possession that he was so excited about. And, he's listening to all the news, the Vietnam War at the time, and all the innovations happening in the West. But he was so far removed from that reality, he couldn't relate. It was very different. Until the moon landing, when man was going to land on the moon in 1969, he could relate to that. He could see the moon, he could feel it, he could experience it. And he was so excited. He went back to the village, told all his friends and family. They thought he was crazy. Nobody believed him. But he believed in it. He believed in the story, which became the beacon of hope for him.
Did that trigger anything for you, for your vision, to make your vision become a reality?
Yes, it became more possible because I suddenly met a crew of humans in the world who deeply care and understand this idea of interconnectedness and peace building for humanity, and having that perspective. And so I found a lot of similarities with the space community similar to like the peace building community, this notion that there are no borders, right? Like astronauts talk about this, like when they are up there, they don't see any borders. There's just one planet, one world. There's no division. For me, space represents this invitation to expand your perspective, to think outside of this very small box that we often live in, whether it's at a country level or a community level. It's like to remember that there are other tribes, other communities, other perspectives, other belief systems, other religions, other ways of life, and to stay curious and open and to look at it as like, oh, that's interesting. Let me learn about that. Or instead of, living in judgment or fear, to be curious to something new and different, because it expands us as humans. And so that's what I found in the space community. This also like this childlike feeling. People I find in space are they still have that like curiosity, that deep curiosity. Yeah.
Tell me about those folks you met at the dinner. You met Loretta, you met someone from Virgin Galactic. So tell us about those folks.
I mean, there's so many wonderful people. Anusha Ansari self-funded her trip to space and went with the Russians, which was really cool. Her book is amazing. I'm forgetting the name of it, but I believe something dreams. Something has dream in it. I'll find the name as well. But it's a great book because she came to the United States very young, didn't speak English, but was very driven to learn and physics and math, and eventually her dream was to go to space, and she did it. She became the first Iranian woman in Middle East, from the Arab world, to self-fund her voyage to space, and what that inspired in future generations and the young people across the region, and she's still doing a lot of amazing work with the X Prize and making. They funded, I believe, what became Virgin Galactic like early on. And so many other people.
And this was also the moment when you got in touch with the Space for Humanity.
Space for Humanity
idea.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I mean, it was when I shared my dream in the space, someone, actually it was Loretta, who said, oh, you should meet Rachel Lyons, who at the time was the executive director of Space for Humanity. We then became soul sisters. She's amazing, like young woman who was leading this initiative, sending people to space. I found out about the program and I applied. And I didn't think I was going to even make it to the first round. But then I did. And then that gave me even more confidence. And then it's the second round and the third round. And then you're in the final interview process of like your weight and your height. And are you fit to go to space? And we have a little visitor.
Yeah.
And the woman who ended up actually being selected to go, Katya, is an incredible young woman who became the first Mexican woman to go to space. And she's on an incredible journey now, changing policy in Mexico to make space more accessible. We also had Sarah, who became the first African woman, Egyptian woman to go to space. And she was the second person selected to go. But, it didn't matter, like, whether I go or you go, or it doesn't matter. It's like it's the opportunity to, I think when especially people from developing countries start to go to space, it really opens up a whole spectrum of possibility for people in that country and the young people.
Tell us about the selection process. What does it take for anyone to go into space? What is it that you're tested for?
The main criteria is global impact, is this idea that the work that you're doing in the world is having meaningful contribution in a specific region or across the world. And so I believe Katya was working on, or is working on, making STEM available for everyone, especially for women and girls. So that was the project that she was selected to go. And there's like a post program as well. So when you come back, there's a whole mentoring program around, well, how do you bring this idea of the overview effect to the world and to different communities?
So it's not so much about being a super athlete, like back in the Apollo days.
No.
So
it's about the impact, your capacity for impact in the world.
Okay. Good. And this in turn triggered another idea in your life, right? Because now you weren't ready or chosen to go into space, but space still remained with you, and you had your idea for earthly encounters with space people. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of bringing people together is something we've been doing for the last, I believe, 14 years now. Since I was 17, I came to the United States as a young cultural Moroccan ambassador. But that was my first job out of high school. And actually, it was still in high school technically, but my job was to go to America for a year and meet Americans and talk to them about Morocco and Africa and the Middle East and Muslim women, Arab women, and break down barriers, because it was in a post 9/11 era where there is a lot of racism and discrimination against certain populations. And somehow the US government selected me to represent a whole region and continent, which was a privilege. But I was 17, and there was a lot of things I didn't know about my own country and region. So I ended up studying women's issues in the Middle East. I ended up researching quite a bit around integration, assimilation, and identity for people in the East who go to the West, and how do we integrate? So it became, I was very curious about these topics because I was an Arab Muslim woman who is now in America, and like, do I integrate or do I assimilate? Do I become like them so I can fit and belong, or do I stay true to some of my values that are very different from what I was finding in college, or like drinking and whatever it is? Like, I mean, no judgment. Again, it's different cultures, but I was struggling with, how do I belong? It was a big question in my life. And so in college, I just felt very alone. And then after a few months, I said, you know what? I am going to go on a research, like discovery. I want to go to all 50 states and understand other people's lives. Like,
what age was that?
I was 18.
18. And you were planning to travel all 50 states?
On a Greyhound bus.
Greyhound bus, of course. Whatever would you do? So
Right.
18-year-old woman, Greyhound bus, what can go wrong?
And so I went to my advisor, Omar Dahi. He was amazing. He's Syrian. And I was like, so I don't just want to be in school. I want to spend the next 4 years traveling everywhere to do research on these topics. And he said, do you know how to do it? I'm like, I'll figure it out. And he's like, great, we'll support you. And he approved it. So I was able...
So who was he again?
Omar Dahi. He was my school advisor.
Okay.
Who I think understood that the only way to support me through college was to let me do what I wanted to do. And
to not interfere with
To not interfere. And he told me when I graduated, he's like, I knew on day one that the best advisor I can be for you is to let you just do what you want to do. And that's the biggest gift until today that's been offered to me, because had I followed the more traditional educational system, I wouldn't have been able to do what I did. And that's why I'm 31 and feel like I'm 150 years old. So
tell me again, so
well.
you're 18, you were in your school phase, were you then?
Undergrad.
Undergrad.
Yeah.
Good. And then as an undergrad, you finished that level, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I finished. I eventually graduated.
Okay, you graduated and then you went on a journey.
No, the journey was happening while I was in school.
So how would that, I know this
makes sense.
How does that work?
So
because while you're at school, you should be in school.
Right. I went to a school where you design your own major, and we have no grades, you design your own curriculum. So it's called Hampshire College. It's in Massachusetts, And it's a school that is very experiential. And so if you have an idea, then you just do that. So it's not like you don't have to follow the traditional taking classes. I was taking some classes, but most of my education was on the road. And I was receiving grants to go travel and do research in Europe, in Morocco, in Middle East, and around the US. So the educational system supports you to follow your interests.
Fantastic.
So good.
So what were your research questions then?
Identity, morality, and cultural evolution. That was one big project. Women's issues in the Middle East, in particular Morocco, understanding the Mudawana, which is the family code book, and policies around that. I was entrepreneurship. I was interested in this idea of starting your own entrepreneurial endeavors. That's how Voyaj started even in college. Hampshire gave me my first seed funding to start my business. They gave me my first 60K to start Voyaj.
Tell us about that. Voyaj.
Oh my God.
Another.
Yeah, another. Voyaj was founded exactly 10 years ago. And I was traveling to all these places, meeting all these amazing families and people around the country. And people would ask me, like, how do you know all these people? And how do you just go? And I found that interesting. I'm like, well, I just talk to people everywhere. Like anywhere, everywhere, no matter who they are, I just say hello and start a conversation. And I realized that people didn't do that. I thought everyone did that because the naive in me was like, oh, like we are one big family. And I realized it was not common for people to just go and meet people on a bus, on a train, on a plane, at airports, in the streets. And I don't know, I had a very natural way of connecting with people everywhere, and not just connecting with people, but deeply connecting with people. Like to the point that after a brief conversation, they become family and we visit each other and they come here. They've stayed in my family's home. Like I've had so many people come stay in Rabat and my parents hosting them. I've been hosted over 200 families in America. So I was having this grand adventure, and Voyaj was kind of an experiment to connect the people I was meeting together so that they also have these cross-cultural exchanges and experiences. So almost like turning myself into an app or a platform to enable cross-cultural exchange. And that's how the idea came about. It was just an evolution of what I was doing and wanting other people to do the same. And we've had a lot of trials and errors. We've done amazing programming over the years, and I'm still trying to figure it out in terms of scale and how do you reach people in like faraway places. So that's still a question. Using how do we use technology? We just finished building an app right now that we're piloting and testing, but in a very practical way, it looks like dinner conversations, a circle of people from around the world coming together to explore questions around origin, stories, identity, culture. What does home mean to you? What's your biggest challenge? How can we help as a community? And what is your wildest dream? And so that's what it looks like in its current iteration. And lately, we've been bringing refugees, astronauts, and locals together in the same room. That's been amazing.
Why astronauts?
Because I love space. And I've started becoming good friends with the space community and astronauts, like Simon Proctor and Loretta, who's actually going up with Virgin Galactic in a couple of years. Chris Simbrowski, recently met Chris Hadfield, who's excited about it. And so it's been this, it was just simply that I felt this resonance with astronauts who really got the Voyaj mission at the core, this idea that we're all one, that we're all one family, and they just got it. And therefore invited them to join these dinners, and they all said yes, which is really cool because...
So who is selected to participate in such a dinner? And how do you select those folks? So you have an astronaut, okay, but how about the refugees?
The refugees. So the one example I can offer is the one refugee dinner we did, refugee astronaut dinner, about a month ago in Kent, Washington, which is about an hour from Seattle. And I was having, actually, the backstory is I was having a conversation, catching up with Chris Zimbrowski, who's, I believe, named Hanks on the Inspiration 4 mission. And he randomly, a friend of his did a raffle, and he got selected. His friend didn't want to go to space, so he gave him his seat. He gifted him his seat. And so Chris was like, sure, I'll go. I'll go to space for 3 days and change his life. Mm-hmm. So I met Chris through Loretta, actually, because Loretta brings us together in many different ways. And we became friends. And we talk a lot about, peace and like challenges in the world. And I was telling him that I was having a conversation with World Relief, which is a resettlement agency for refugees in America. Mm-hmm. Actually, global. It's a global organization. And we connected and we decided to collaborate and do a dinner for refugees in Kent as part of their integration and like a welcoming experience. So I'm having a conversation with Amy about this, and we're planning this dinner. And then an hour later, I'm having a different conversation with Chris, telling him about this amazing nonprofit I just met called World Relief, based in Kent. And he's like, what do you mean? I am in Kent. Like, I work for Blue Origin, and Blue Origin is in Kent. I'm like, okay. Well, how would you feel about bringing refugees and the space community together, and you can share about your journey in outer space as part of the dinner? And within weeks, Blue Origin was involved, Cup for the Future, which is their philanthropy arm. And we invited employees and refugees and then Voyaj ambassadors who flew in from across the country to be at this dinner. So it was like 40 people in this big circle having dinner. Oh, and this amazing chef, Maya, who was learning ingredients about the different cultures where the refugees are from and designing a menu to create this incredible feast based on the different countries. So we had like Afghan, Moroccan, like a fusion. And and she just offered that as part of her gift and contribution. And it got sponsored by McKaylee, this amazing young woman who heard about the dinner and she's like, can I sponsor it? And like, yes. And that's how it happened. It was very co-creative.
It seems like it seems like it could be a challenge to balance completely different life situations, because you have the overprivileged astronaut and the underprivileged refugee. How do you go? Do you go about that?
That's a beautiful question, because what I found they have in common is many, many things. And that's what made it really exciting, because even though they both are coming from different places, they both are taking tremendous risks, right, to go into the unknown and go into uncharted territories. Refugees are leaving their homes without the promise of returning home. Astronauts are also leaving the planet without a promise of returning. We've seen tragedy happen in the past, so it's a huge risk. I mean, it's not super safe to go to space, and it's a huge risk when you get on that rocket that you might not come back, and you know the risk front and center. So I found that to be interesting, that courage and that risk-taking to go into the unknown that only few people have gone on in our lifetime. And tremendous amount of resilience. Both refugees and astronauts have this, they're very present to their life experience, and they have this resilience that you can actually sense when you're talking to them. You feel like it's an honor to meet a refugee and hear their story, and equally important to meet an astronaut and hear their journey. Because again, there's 117 million refugees in the world, about 3.7 million only in the United States. So a lot of people don't have a chance to meet them because they tend to be with their own community. And this initiative is trying to bridge them with the other communities in the US that are well established to be able to create new pathways for hope and inspiration for a better life in their new home.
So you got about, I don't know, how many are participating in that dinner?
About 40.
40. So you got 40 out of 170 million people. So how can you let that snowball?
That's a beautiful question. The simple answer is, if you are interested to be an ambassador of this way of bringing people together, the Voyaj way, we have a guidebook. We have a way to empower you and give you permission to host a dinner in your hometown. And it doesn't have to always be refugees and astronauts. It could be scientists and non-scientists, or like musicians and artists, and it could be any group that you want. But with this idea of breaking barriers and having different perspectives in the same room. So so the Voyaj, there's an app that you can sign up on, and you can create an experience to invite your local friends to join. So you can do one in Vienna even, bringing people together. And you then get connected to the Voyaj community around the world. And so that's kind of the format of how we're doing it.
Are there any memories that stand out from such dinners between astronauts and refugees? Any stories you would like to share?
Yes, there's so many. My favorite one is when some of the new arrivals, which I prefer, refugees, new arrivals, newcomers are all different terms that we use to dignify I don't like refugees, but also it's how people understand it. But I really like new arrivals because it's this idea that we have this new group of people who are arriving in a new country, and how do we welcome them? How do we ensure that they have a meaningful Moroccan welcome? Like with tea, like the one we had on Monday. Just so it really shifts your experience, like how you're welcomed in a new place. But
problem is these days we're not deliberately not welcoming people anymore.
Yeah.
Because we're shutting
borders.
That's the problem.
And we need to ask the question, why are we doing that? Because of scarcity, that we feel like we don't have enough space in our home, in our countries, that immigrants or refugees are taking the jobs of locals. We need to really rethink and reevaluate, why are we shutting down our borders? Because ultimately, we are going to be refugees. It's just a matter of time. My friends in Southern California yesterday lost their homes, and now they're refugees. They don't have a home. So it's climate refugees, not just war refugees. And it's happening more and more. And it's going to magnify more in the next couple of years with climate change. And so we might think it's this problem over there, but it's actually happening domestically.
It's very powerful. We will always be refugees at some point, because now we're driven into that situation by our own climate changing activities. But mostly, some smart person once said, we're strangers almost in any place in the world, because we just have our teeny little home. But whenever we go somewhere, we are strangers.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a powerful thing to think about. But yeah, but anyway, so you're trying to snowball this through this app and whatnot into turning it into a powerful network. I'd love to hear how the astronauts reacted or are usually reacting to the refugee stories, because I just want to find out how the power dynamic works in such a dinner, because I would fanboy an astronaut, I think. But are there fanboying moments in the direction of refugees also possible? So I'm just trying to find out is the astronaut taking something away from those conversations?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's been really beautiful to experience it's almost like the astronaut understands the responsibility that they carry when they come back from space. And that it's almost like a duty and responsibility to show up in that way. And they want to. They want to because they've been blasted into the universe. They've fallen in love with the planet. They want to contribute back to Earth in meaningful ways. And most of them do. Most of them are doing that. But so to receive an invitation to meet refugees in an intimate way as humans, I don't like to call them refugees, but as friends, it's an honor. And that's the word they use, like, it would be an honor for me to have dinner in a very intimate, casual way with refugees and hear their stories and for them to hear my story. And they find commonalities, so many. And you asked me a question earlier about some of my favorite stories or aha moments. It's been that in the circle, we ask people, what is your biggest challenge right now? What's your origin story? Where do you come from? So that builds trust and coherence and harmony. But then we ask, what is the current challenge that you're experiencing right now and you would like support with? And then the last question is, what is your wildest dream? And we specifically use the word wildest because we want people to dream imaginable dreams. And what we find every time is that someone's dream and someone's challenge are correlated, one and the same. Someone's biggest dream or biggest challenge is like integration or, finding community, or one woman was to become like a well-known architect. Sarah built the metro station in Turkey, which is amazing. And she's a Syrian refugee, left Syria to go to Lebanon, had to flee Lebanon and then go to Turkey, and has faced discrimination throughout. Took her 12 years to get her asylum status in the US. Eventually got it with her family. And now she's here in the US and she wants to just do architecture. That's what she studied and that's her dream. And then someone in the room was like a really well-known architect and connected the dot. And that to me is the power of these dinners, because you never know how what you feel like is unreachable is actually right in front of you. But you have to have the boldness to share your dream. Like what I did with Cameron, when he asked, Cameron did what I'm now doing. He said, Yasmine has a dream she would like to share. And by me sharing it, people rallied. It's the same thing that happens. You have a room of 40 people who are all listening to you. And so we create a safe space on the floor with Moroccan rugs. I bring my teapot everywhere. I literally carry 4 rugs across the country with me, a duffel bag that has usually 40 pillows. People look at me at airports, are like, what is happening? I'm like, well, we're doing this thing and everybody's excited and everyone wants to be part of it. And people offer their homes in different states. And it's amazing. Strangers. We're like, well, if you ever want to do something in Alabama, I have my house open, or my house in, Ojai. Or it's been incredible to see this is all of us. It's not just these 40 people or these, last month alone, we brought 190 people together across 7 cities in America. It was wild to do that in 1 month, but it was an experiment. I'm like, let's go for 1 month and go to all these cities and see what happens. So I have a lot of stories.
So does that need a host, a moderator, so to say, a dinner?
You need a facilitator, someone who is going to hold the space to ensure that everybody shares in the room. You need a home, so you need a host, someone who can open. We love home settings because being in someone's home is very intimate. And for new arrivals, they get to have an American experience in being in a beautiful house or a beautiful home. But surprisingly, churches have been opening their homes. Like their church, like we've had, the Cantu dinner was in a church. And they had a kitchen, and we had chefs and refugee chefs, sous chefs being involved. And So we love home settings. I mean, this space right here is perfect. I could do something here. And we've done things here before. But I mean, it's a home and a facilitator. Food is always nice because people get hungry when you're sharing so deeply. Tea, outgoing tea, and music as well. So we'll have like someone playing al-oud, Moroccan, Arabic, or international. It doesn't have to be, I'm going Moroccan because I'm Moroccan, but it could be a Spanish influenced dinner. It could be Mexican, cultural experience. So it doesn't just have to be Moroccan. I like it because I'm from Morocco. So it's my way of sharing my culture. But we have dinners that are also multicultural.
So it's quite the opposite of what social media is about.
Yes. Yeah.
So it's the analog version that's a lot more powerful. That really works. It's
what we're having right now.
Exactly.
Although I feel like I have not asked you any questions, so I'm slightly embarrassed. Because usually I'm the one asking questions. So thank you for being so kind.
Fantastic. I think what you're doing here has a huge future. And I think so because we are living in a very transitory phase culturally with the arrival of artificial intelligence, invading almost everything we have socially or in our private homes and whatnot. And so it seems like with artificial intelligence being able to replicate almost anything, we're losing the places where we can feel safe and where we feel trusted. So anything that's happening on the internet makes no sense anymore in times of artificial intelligence because there is no trust behind it anymore. I do not know what I'm confronted with. So I think there may be a huge revival of the analog in the future, what we're having right now. We're not wearing those techno glasses or techno shades that like VR glasses. So right now, this is as true and real as it can get. And maybe in times of hyper technology, this is what humans will be looking for, the real experience. Mm-hmm. And this real experience is a local experience. It cannot be global anymore because it can only work if we sit next to one another. So I'm not advocating for the disappearance of the internet and technology, quite the opposite. But still, I think there's two paths. Now we're bifurcating in two ways. We will have an AI-driven whatever world that is, but at the same time, we will cherish and appreciate profound analog experiences. Mm-hmm. That's what I think.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, the analog, that's part of the space, like almost every astronaut has to go on an analog mission, yes. Right? So in a way, it's like sitting in Hawaii or in a Mars simulation and you're there highlighting what's happening in long form, right? Like audio or a voice form. And I think I miss that. I miss a handwritten note, and I actually wanted to share something with you, which is this postcards that I collaborated with the Blue Origin Club for the Future to co-brand these postcards that in every Voyage dinner, at the end, people write like a love letter to their future selves or a message that they want to send out to humanity. Then Blue Origin sends it to outer space on a rocket ship and then mail it back to your home. And it's a very simple activity, but what it does, one, it sparks inspiration of like, oh, I get to have a physical object that is going to fly to space and come back to me. We're not polluting the space because it's coming back to Earth. We're just putting it in a box. But it has this significance. And so I'll make sure to give you a postcard
yeah.
before we leave today because, the messages that we have received so far are really beautiful and very simple, oftentimes involves around peace and love for the world, or space for everyone, or no more wars. Very simple messages, but holds value, and you see that it's universal. No matter what country or state that we do this in, people want the same thing everywhere.
It's as simple as it gets and as difficult as it gets. Fantastic. Yasmine, if the call came right now, we got a ticket for you to go into space, I guess you would go, right?
Oh, yes. I can't wait. I mean, it's going to I feel it. It's a matter of time, but I'm ready.
Any
I'm
limits?
preparing.
Would you go to Mars? Just
I
to know-
actually have no interest to go to Mars. I only want to go to the moon. I mean, I'll go to like the origin, but like 11-minute ride, which, you know, you still get to experience the overview effect. I mean, I don't know if this will happen or not, but I was gifted a seat with Worldview, which is like, do you know, space perspective Worldview? It's the balloon ride. Essentially, more of a...
I think I saw them at South by Southwest 2 years ago.
Yeah.
When they set up their capsule
Yes.
on the ground, and you could experience it on screens. So what the ride will be like.
So that's a really cool innovation in space, because the idea is you go to the edge of space, about 100,000 feet view, and you still get the overview effect, and you're there for like 8 to 12 hours. Space Perspective just successfully did their test, which is awesome. Of course, Richard Branson will be the first to go on this ride, because that makes sense, because he did the whole balloon, not space balloon, but the other balloon with Virgin a long time ago. That's actually in Marrakesh. Do you know the story? It's a great story,
No.
but he went from, I believe, England to Morocco on a balloon, and he landed in the Atlas Mountains and fell in love with the region. And his mom wanted to contribute to the region here, so they started the Eve Branson Foundation to help empower girls and women in the region. And he told her, the only reason we would buy a hotel here is if you help the community. And they've done it in a really meaningful way. His mom since passed, but they've had a lot of impact in the Atlas Mountains over there. And I've collaborated with them over the years, but it's really cool. I think Richard Branson is a good human who's really trying to do good things. But I'm excited that he'll be the ambassador for the space balloon that will go up next year. Well, actually in 2026. So a year from now, 2 years from now. But Worldview is another company that is on the path. Probably a couple of years later than Space Perspective. Right now, they're focused on space missions, but their intention is also to take people on these 100,000 feet view, but from like the Grand Canyon or from the Sahara Desert, so that you're like going up slowly and having this experience of looking down of the really beautiful national parks across the world. So they're great too. And these space companies, and there's going to be more and more. I believe there's one in Europe coming up too. Forgot what it's called, but they're also wanting to take people up and democratizing space.
I keep asking this question time and again because I would like to find an answer, but it feels like humans are growing wings at the moment, and we're starting to become what some call interplanetary, because the technology is getting ready. So back in the Apollo days, they were sort of the precursors, the pioneers, but now we're taking it more seriously. And space is opening up and maybe inviting us to not be conquered, not at all.
Yeah.
This used to be back in the day, but to be discovered maybe.
Yeah, I mean, we're explorers.
Yeah.
I like our nature. We're like from tribes and from the deserts, and we come from very far away lands, and we've always been explorers. So wanting to go explore Mars and the moon is okay. It's like part of the human evolution. But I do believe that everyone should be involved, which means let's not forget like Africa and the Middle East and other countries. And that to me is what matters. Is like when I look at all this space, people who've gone up. It's mostly Western countries and mostly Americans, Europeans as well. but we need more diversity. And that's something that, I'd love to see a refugee go up. I'd love to see an Israeli and a Palestinian go up in the same, rocket. Maybe Russians and a Russian and Ukrainian and a Republican and Democrats. And let's all go up and have a conversation, because most people in the world are good humans, and the media can sometimes derail us from the truth. But look deeper and ask the questions, because it's very easy to get clouded by fear and feel like the world is this clouded, dark place. But
It's not.
it's not.
It's absolutely not.
It's beautiful. It's mostly good.
Regarding that question, if you were going to go to space, so let's just, and this is also a question I keep asking my guests. Going into space is exciting, but when you go to Mars, it can get easily boring because it's a long journey. So what's the one piece of music you would not want to miss on your playlist
Oh my God.
when things get boring?
Coldplay.
The cool thing is we have a playlist on Spotify for the aspiring space traveler. And so what's your contribution? Coldplay.
Coldplay.
And what track? What track?
I literally, Coldplay has been part of my journey since I was young and dreaming to leave Morocco and travel the world. And their new album is called The Moon. I'm like, okay, Chris Martin, we're in sync. So he's amazing. And I really feel deep resonance. I would listen to Coldplay. I mean, in fact, I have a request. When I'm going up one day, I would love for Chris Martin to be the artist for my launch party.
Fantastic. Chris, if you hear this, and what track of the new album? You get to contribute one track.
It would be, there's one called The Moon, I believe, which is their main song.
Okay, good.
In the new album.
Fantastic. Last question, Jasmine. This is called the Space Cafe Podcast. Although we're drinking tea right now, it's a coffee place.
We're evolving. Control.
And in coffee places, and then energize yourself with an espresso, a shot to energize yourself. Now, I challenge you to share an espresso for the mind with me, a shot of inspiration, whatever kind of topic you want to pick.
Anything?
Anything.
Seek first to understand, and then to be understood.
That's deep.
Stay curious and open,
Fantastic.
and you'll be understood. Yeah.
Hey, Jasmine, thank you so much for that conversation.
Thank you.
Really appreciate
Shukran. It's been a pleasure. And to our next cup of tea, maybe here or maybe on the moon.
Great. Fantastic. We're through.
Yay. That was amazing. That was so cool.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this. I have to admit, I also like to travel, and I'm completely sharing Jasmine's open-hearted and open-minded view of the world. Whenever I travel, no matter where I go in this world, I only meet good people. So perhaps this is what I'm experiencing. I see a different world than the one portrayed in the media. If you like what you hear on the show, if you like this episode with Jasmine, why don't you share it with someone you like, with someone you feel like could benefit or appreciate listening to this? And why don't you give the show a rating on your favorite podcast listening platform or a review? This would help us heaps to get the show to the next level. Until then, my friends, again, thank you so much for sticking around, for your loyalty, and I'm looking forward to talking to you in 2 weeks from now. And until then, take good care and bye-bye.